Thank you very much, Michael Challenge. I would particularly like to thank God for this opportunity because I'm sure it's God's will that I'm here. So I'm an academic like Graham, but in different faculty in the business school at Sydney University. So for the very first time this year, I was involved in teaching a subject called Business and Poverty Alleviation. So we had these 50 elite students from Europe who are doing my course. So we did this whole discussion for 9 to 5 about poverty and business. At the end of the day, I think it was about 4:55. One student said, you know what, we're never going to get poverty, understand poverty. So why don't we understand what it means to be rich and think opposite? So what I'm trying to suggest is poverty is an incredibly difficult concept to understand. Even for me, both my parents are missionary doctors in India, and all my life I've gone through villages and hospitals. But I know for a fact that when I go back home, I'll have nice food and a good bed. So uncertainty is a key aspect of being poor. So as businesses, I think one of the key things we need to learn if you actually want to do something about poverty is to understand them. At the least go and see what happens. And also, I learned a lot from maths today, so I'm not an expert in scripture at all. So the only thing I understand about, not the only thing, but the main thing I understand from the Bible and business is that was the only time that Jesus Christ got really angry in the church when they were doing businesses. But maths explained to me it's not the business, but it's the context within which business was done. So I guess that has a huge role to play. So I think we are actually in a unique point of business history. Where I think there's a perfect storm, if you watch the movie, where the UN, nonprofits like Michael Challenge, consumers, everybody wants business to be engaged in more than profitability. And you might be familiar with the famous quote in 1971 by Milton Friedman, I think it is, the economist, who said that the corporate social responsibility of business is to make profit. And I think in 2014, there's a big debate about whether that's true. And I think it's a great idea. I would just like to highlight what I highlight to my students, business students, is that some of the great things have happened in the world because somebody stood back and asked the question, why should it be the way it is? So for example, if you look at Mahatma Gandhi, he questioned the idea, why should we fight with swords? Why can't we fight without fighting? If you look at Copernicus, he asked the question, why should everything go around the earth? And that changed astronomy. And if you look at Steve Jobs, he actually didn't ask his consumers what iPhone they want. He did it themselves because he thought consumers don't understand. All of these things go against what is normal. But the best example, obviously, is Jesus Christ. As a lay, I'm not a scripture expert at all, but what I understand from the Bible is that Jesus Christ asked us to be radical, to fundamentally change the nature of things. And I think Christian leaders, we have a great opportunity at this stage to be not followers, but leaders in this idea that business is more than profits, that business has to do with poverty too. I was recently at the World Investment Forum in Geneva at the UN conference where they were talking about the Sustainable Development Goals for 2015 to 2030. Everybody there were talking about what the role of the private sector is. How can it engage with the Sustainable Development Goals? And the 2 out of the 25 preeminent members of the panel that looking at this, led by the British Prime Minister and the Indonesian President, I think, 2 of them are business people for the very first time. So when they first developed the Millennium Development Goals, there was no business people. So that shows a shift in thinking. And obviously our Australian government, it's going from, I think, trade for aid, the other way around, aid for trade kind of attitude. But I would like to take a more global developing, country approach. There are about 7 to 8 billion people in the world. Would anybody know how many people live on less than $4 a day? $5 a day? About 4 billion people. But what we teach in the business school and what businesses have assumed is that we target the 3 billion people who have the money. My question is, what happened to the other 4 billion people? Right? I'm sure charity plays a huge role, but I'm also sure that there's both an economic imperative and a moral imperative to target these people with less than $5 a day. It seems very counterintuitive, but it requires us to change the way we think about business. Mostly it's been about low volume and high margins We have to rethink that to high volume and low margins. There's a great example from Kenya. About 20 to 30% of poor people don't have banks. And it's not really good financial management to have your money behind your pillow and, kind of. And so M-Pesa, I think it's Vodafone and Safaricom, they actually came up with the mobile phone technologies where the poor people, they can actually do business online. So they increase financial literacy, increasing poverty, alleviating poverty. They made $280 million last year. So it requires you to think very differently, question what is normal. And I don't think the same business principles are applicable there. But some of the questions my students ask is, aren't they contradictory? Even how can you have business profitability and alleviate poverty? Well, the word I use to explain that is ambidextrous. If any of you use both your right and left hand, you understand what that means. From the scripture, it's God trying to be both just and merciful, not trying to hear, sorry. So, and it's the same idea. Just because it's so counterintuitive. And as I said before, I think as Christians, we need to be leading this charge, following Jesus, because that's what he did. He was countercultural. I mean, if you look at any of the 8 Beatitudes, I would think each one, even now, is so radical, it's so unhuman, but that's what he calls us to be. So what I'm suggesting is, as business leaders, we need to move beyond and be leaders in saying, hang on, it is possible to make profits, and it is possible to alleviate poverty. I would just like to finish off by defining poverty, because that's important. Poverty is not just income deprivation, so not just that you don't have money. I think it's really important to understand the fact that poverty is also a lack of freedom to be who you want to be. So just because you have money, but you can't be who you want to be, that's also poverty. A great example to finish off is, so I was doing some research with microfinance women, so ultra poor. So ultra poor, you're talking about probably less than 50 cents a day. That's what they earn. And so she happened to be a good entrepreneur. So through the microfinance, she actually, I think she had 2 goats and went to 10 goats. But then she had to go home and give that money to her family, whoever was left. So is she poor or rich? So I guess, one of the key things I would like to, convey today is to really understand what it means to be poverty and to rethink the purpose of business. Thank you.